What's up, friends, and welcome to this week's episode of Tutorial Tuesday. This week we will be going over the painting the base coat of this the dagger that we've been working on. Let me try that again. This week we're going to be going over the painting of the base coat on this dagger that we've been working with. Alright, so if you haven't already, make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you can see more of my Tutorial Tuesday videos. And let's get to painting. Alright, friends, and here we are with the continuing the making of our dagger. Now, last time we ended up prepping and priming this thing so that we can get ready to paint it. Now, we primed it with using Mod Podge, and we added a bunch of layers onto this thing. You can know that you've got the right amount of layers when it's got a bit of a shine to the thing so that it looks nice and shiny all over the place, and that's how you know that we'll be ready to go and start painting it. Alright, so let's get right, let's cut to that painting. Alright, so here we are, and we've got our paints assembled. We're going to be using a couple of acrylics and some flexi paint. So we're using a silver and a gunmetal colors today, and then we're going to be adding in some flexi paint to that. Now the reason that we add flexi paint is that the foam is really absorbent, and we need to add in this flexi paint as it bonds real well to foam. And this stuff is clear, and you can just add it into the acrylics and it will maintain that color, and it'll bond nicely with the acrylics, and then that way we don't need to add as many layers of painting when we do so. I do have a review of flexi paint, and I will leave that at the end of the video. Alright, so now we've got our silver poured into our little paint container here, and then we're just going to add in a little bit of flexi paint. Alright, now I am not 100% sure what the ratio of paint to flexi paint is, but I can tell you that I just kind of, sadly I wing it a little bit. But it's usually, I can tell more about the consistency of how it looks when it's all mixed together. If somebody does know, they could leave a comment down below and let us know. That'd be greatly appreciated. So yeah, we want to just mix in the flexi paint until you see no more of the white that is the clear flexi paint. And you might want to make sure that you get the edges of it as well too, because sometimes it can cling to the container there. Give it a nice stir, make sure everything's all mixed in. And it'll have this bright color to it afterwards. I find when you add especially with the metallic colors. Now, brush I'm using is a foam brush. It works real well. You don't get as many of the brush strokes. Now, the parts that we're going to be painting silver are just going to be the blade, the crossguard, and the pommel. And then the grooves, we are going to be painting the gunmetal color. But first, we want to make sure that we get the silver put down. Now, your first layer is going to kind of look a little thin when you put it on. That is totally okay. We usually put about 2 layers of this on. 2 to 3 layers, depending exactly, but And if you do happen to paint in a area that you don't necessarily want to have the specific color that you're using, that is okay. You can do some touch-ups afterwards and whatnot. So yeah, like I said, we're getting the cross guard. And then when you're painting with a foam brush, you just want to get nice smooth strokes with when you're painting. Now the nice thing about the sponge brush is that it is a sponge and it absorbs the paint real well. So eventually you don't need as much paint on the brush, and you can just kind of give it a little squeeze and get some of the paint that has absorbed into it. And then we want to make sure that we get it pretty much everywhere, so that it, you know, the tops, the bottoms, the sides. And like I said, if it seems a little thin, that is okay, because we will be painting a second coat onto this. Alright, and then now that it's dried, you can see that I've added a second coat onto this. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes in between your layers. And as you can see, it gives it a nice metallic look, bright and shiny, specifically the blade. The next part that we're going to be painting is the grooves and the handles of our dagger, and we're going to be painting that in the gunmetal color. Like I said, I put 2 layers of this on for the silver, and we'll be doing 2 layers of the gunmetal color as well. Alright, and same thing, we've got our paint ready to go, and then we're going to add in some of the flexi paint to give it the effectiveness. Now, you can use pretty much anything as a stir stick. You could use the when you go buy a coffee at like you know, a Max or a 7-Eleven or a corner store, really, you can get the stir sticks. That works well. I use the handles of paintbrushes, as you can clearly see, as they're really the most readily available thing that I have. So it's usually what I end up going with. Alright, then we're going to grab our foam brush, and we are going to paint just the groove areas of this. Now you want to make sure that you get the edges as well, but that we don't paint too much onto the silver part, as we want to keep that silver. But if you do happen to paint outside that edge there, like I said, we can do some touch-up stuff later. And then we make sure that we get into the grooves of the crossguard as well too. And at this point, it is easy to tell where you still might need to apply some paint, as you want to essentially know white parts left over. If you do get on the outside when it's still wet, as you can see, I just use my thumb to clean up some of the edges there. Make sure that we get the other side of the blade as well. And then the grooves. Make sure that we get that all the way in. Alright, now the handle, this is why it is good to actually paint this, let the first coat dry so that we actually have somewhere to grip. And we want to make sure we get it on every part of the handle. And again, if make sure that we do a couple layers so that we get a nice even coat of paint all the way across. When you are letting it dry, though, you want to make sure that you don't have it propped up against anything, as the paint can become a little tacky afterwards, and when you go to pry it apart, it will peel off some of the paint. We will be getting rid of that as our final step, but we're kind of jumping the gun a little bit here, so. Alright, and as you can see, I added a second layer onto the gunmetal parts as well, and then I did a couple touch-ups because there were a couple spots where I ended up getting paint that I didn't want to, so. But yeah, that was 2 layers, and next week's video we'll be going over the weathering of this thing because it looks a little too shiny for my liking and a little too new, so we're going to add some weathering to make it look nice and old. So that make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you can check out the video. Alright, and well, peace out guys, and have a good one. We'll see you next week.